We like to call it the Supernatural Hour. And now, our hosts.
Hey, welcome to the Supernatural Hour again. I am your host, Raven.
This is Doc. This is Chad.
And this is Jen.
The main topic we're going to be talking about is brought to you by wonderful Mexican food, Hotel's Restaurant. They're terrific.
Today we're actually going to talk about, I thought there was just the Dybbuk Box. I didn't realize there were Dybbuk Boxes. Did you know this?
I've heard different stories. I've heard that there is multiple Dybbuk boxes. There is the infamous Dybbuk box that kind of started this whole thing. And then also there are like boxes that people will sell online. I think we talked about that a little bit prior to the podcast. Yeah, so I mean, I think the one that most people are aware of is the story of the Dybbuk box that reportedly came from a woman in Poland who was a Holocaust survivor.
Right. Now, this is the Dybbuk box that currently Zach Baggins has in his haunted museum in Las Vegas. And so Chad and I have seen this. Have you been there?
I've not, but...
Jess, have you been there?
I would be
to Zach Baggins?
No, that sounds cool. Yeah, I never been
so,
there.
So, a little plug for Zach Baggins. You'll know how I feel about his technique.
Surprised you went.
But he does have some really cool stuff in his museum. Okay.
And it was a good tour.
It was a good tour. And that Dybbuk box, you go in and it's kind of in its own room. There wasn't really anything else in there, wasn't it? Wasn't it just the Dybbuk box room? And it's in the center of the room, and the room to me seemed like it was round. Am I remembering that wrong?
I don't remember.
I remember something better than you do.
I don't pay attention.
This doesn't happen very often.
Allegedly.
I don't pay attention to shapes of rooms, all that.
Okay. Remember this moment because this never happens. All right. So it seems to me like the room was round. And the Dybbuk box was in the middle of the room on a pillar with like a case over it. And it had probably 3 inches of salt all the way around it. I've never seen so much salt.
You just want to be sure, right?
Yeah.
Well, no, and I don't blame him.
It was encased in glass in a glass case, and so people.
The only
touch
place
it.
I've seen more salt in one period of time was the Salt Flats in Salt Lake City.
But how close could you walk to it?
You could touch the glass if you wanted to, I think.
Snap.
I opted to not.
And it's a wine cabinet, right?
And I'm trying to think. It seems like they had the little velvet.
Yeah, I think they encourage you not to touch the glass.
Yeah, but you got close enough that you could. And I probably wouldn't have zapped you if you tried to. But I just
probably, maybe.
Thinking of the Dybbuk box, maybe we should talk about what a Dybbuk actually is.
Go for it.
So, the victim, or the previous owner, the Holocaust survivor, was Jewish, and in Jewish mythology, Dybbuks are essentially demons, spirits, bad spirits for the most part. I'm sure they can manifest in a bunch of different ways, but apparently this particular Dybbuk or demon had been trapped inside the box. And then the box was sold, right? It was purchased from this Holocaust victim to somebody who was...
It was at a garage sale, I believe.
Was it at a garage sale?
Or an estate sale. I think of garage sales more. I think this would be more of an estate sale where they had some different things. So it was an estate sale. Apparently, the guy that bought it had an antique store, so he'd be out looking for antiques and different things like that. And it's like, hey, cool, a wine box, and it had a little brass lock on it, that had been added extra, the little latch, and then a little brass lock on it so it couldn't be opened up. He was like, pretty excited to get it.
So this individual's name is Kevin Manis. Looks like this happened in Portland.
Now, Kevin found this wine box, and it's really quite a pretty box. It's a nice size. Smaller. When I say smaller, what, 2 feet?
Yeah. You could probably get 4 wine bottles in it.
Yeah, and it's wood, and it's got some pretty little appliques on the front of it.
It has like a grape leaf looking thing on the front. I actually have a picture of it with the salt and the huge wine.
Yep. And so he decided to give it to his mother as a gift. Was it his mother?
For her birthday.
For her birthday. And so they're sitting in their shop, and he's like, Mom, happy birthday. Look, I got this really cool antique wine, box for you.
That contains pure evil.
So about this time, he gets a phone call, or he's called away. And so he leaves the room, and there she is. And she's like, oh, my son bought me this antique wine box. This is really cool. So she starts to examine it.
As a mother would,
Well,
who was just
yeah.
gifted a box.
Hey, this is pretty. Let's check it out. So she opens it up, and inside there's a little, I can't remember if it was a rock or a little placard, but it had some Hebrew words on it. I think it said shalom.
I didn't hear what it said, but yeah, there was Hebrew script on the.
I think it was shalom. I could be wrong. And there's a couple other things in there. But
Oh yeah, it had 2 U.S. wheat pennies dating 1925 and 1928, 2 locks of hair, a dried rosebud, and 4-legged candlestick, a golden wine cup, and a granite sculpture inscribed with the Hebrew word shalom.
Yep, I remember the shalom part.
1 for 8, not bad.
Hey,
I was going to say almost passing, but no.
right now, I'm having
Like,
to
whose
learn.
hair is that?
I've got 9 tunes I'm trying to learn in 3 weeks on my bagpipes. So the fact that I remember anything is amazing.
You got to make space. You got to push a few things out.
I have bagpipe brain right now.
Yeah, Jess, I'm with you. Well, I didn't hear much about the hair, or they
Yeah,
didn't
just
say
said
much
2
about that.
locks of hair. Like, who did that? Where did
Well,
it come from?
We kind of know, sort of, but not really.
Why would there be wheat pennies?
Yeah. So what the guy's
the
name was
1920s.
Kevin. The owner's name was Kevin.
Kevin Manis, yep.
So, he stepped out to take care of some business. Mom's looking at the box. And then one of the coworkers noticed that, a few minutes later, Mom's not doing so good. He goes over, tries to get her attention. She's just kind of staring off into space. And the only thing she can really do is point at the box. So he runs and goes and gets Kevin. And, hey, there's something wrong with your mom. So he comes out. Mom has had a stroke. But the only thing she can do is she's so concerned about what she saw. I mean, we actually watched a YouTube and heard her give an eyewitness account of what happened. But, she just said that when she opened the box, she felt like something just evil was there. And she said she could almost feel the stroke coming on. And but she said she knew it was what happened to her. She says, I knew it was because of what was in the box. I wanted to warn my son and the other people in the store that it was evil and it was very, very bad and to stay away. So she even though she just had a stroke, she put every ounce of effort and every ounce of anything that she could do at that point to tell them, stay away from the box. And so she was able to do it in such a way that Kevin's like, there's something wrong with that box.
Right.
Yeah, and I was reading the...
I mean, like a creepy stare.
Yeah.
Just staring off at it.
I was reading that Dybbuks are capable of possession. Like, they can take over people's bodies.
Yeah, they're strong ones.
And also they're capable of inflicting harm, which would, stroke would probably fall into that category.
Yep. Yeah, well, and then on to the next owner, because at this point, Kevin's like, yeah, I don't want this box.
Well, he tried to take it back to the place where he got it at the estate sale, thinking, first of all, that they might, want it because of the stuff that was inside and everything else. And the girl's like, no, we don't want it,
We don't want your stroke box anymore.
Yeah,
Take it back.
keep that away.
They said, no, we're not taking it back.
She wouldn't take it back. And I guess her
That's
aunt
a bad
was there
sign
also.
right there.
It's like,
Nope, we don't want it.
Tag, you're it.
There was a reason it was so cheap.
Yeah, he tried to give it to his girlfriend at the time, and she was like, no, I don't want that thing. Like, why would you give that evil thing to your girlfriend? What's wrong with you?
Yeah, people are weird.
So, just on a little bit of a tangent, one of the things that I find really interesting about this paranormal story is how well documented it is. We've talked a little bit about that a lot of paranormal stories can be hearsay and, speculation and that kind of stuff. But there's, the people that actually were involved here, are on camera, and it's relevant and current, kind of like the Don Decker case, where there's, people around that were involved, and you can actually talk to people that were involved in the paranormal aspect of the case. And so I find that interesting about this case with this specific Dybbuk box.
Yeah,
Well, it's only happened from like 2001, so like it's like other stories are so ancient, like you never know, like word of mouth and stuff. But this is like only 2001.
Because of that, it's well documented, and there's video, and there's, the actual interviews with the people that were involved. Yeah, I'm with you, Jess, on the other, because some of them are so old. Even as you get back into the 20s and 30s, even into the 60s, we didn't have as much recording equipment and stories, and sometimes there were newspaper articles. But
people weren't blogging about stuff back then.
Yep.
Blogging, YouTubing,
They were blabbing.
TikToking.
That's right.
Yeah,
But yeah,
They're
documentation.
blabbing their mouths.
yeah, word of mouth was about all you had at some point.
But it sounds like it. So the box was eventually sold to a Jason Haxton.
Yeah, is he the one that was like a...
He's the director of the Museum of Osteopathic Medicine in Crooksville, Missouri.
Right.
Look at
Now,
that.
isn't that a place where you were looking at going?
I did apply there. I didn't end up interviewing there. I went somewhere else.
Well, that's because you went to the place that you applied to first, and that was your first choice.
Indeed, but yeah, it was on my list. But I thought it was interesting that this box ended up in the hands of somebody there, because Kirksville, Missouri is not a very large city. It's a pretty small town. Just happens to have an osteopathic medical school there. That's where osteopathic medicine started.
The guy, one of the YouTube videos that I watched actually interviewed him. He was actually talking about it. And, he was looking at it to, not to say to debunk the paranormal, but to understand it and to look at it from a scientific standpoint. And, you have somebody with the medical and the scientific background looking at this, and he was quite interested in that.
And it was my understanding that he didn't toy with it a lot. He basically just buried it in his yard. At least that was one of the accounts that I read, is that he, wasn't really screwing around with it a whole lot. Wanted it, was interested in it, but eventually just was like putting this thing in the ground
Yeah,
for a while.
what I had read and listened to on YouTube was he, put some gloves on and was doing a bunch of experiments, and there's this little area that's dark, and let's see what that is, and didn't have any issues with it, and thought, this is just a bunch of a load of hogwash. He left it in the office, and people in the office started complaining about headaches.
Just at the school.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
And complaining of headaches, complaining of things, and so then he took it home. And at home, weird things started happening. Something happened to him. I don't remember what it was, but I remember his wife was banging on the door because he was in the bathroom. Oh, he got sick, really sick to his stomach. Was throwing up a gelatinous substance that he had never seen before. While he's in the bathroom throwing up, his wife comes running up the stairs screaming his name, banging on the door. He opens the door, and the interesting thing is they showed pictures of this, but just water blisters, like just from the tips of her fingers clear up to her elbows on both of her arms. And so at that point he's like, yeah, I'm done with it.
We're putting this away.
Yeah.
So he played with it at first, and then he didn't love it. Then he buried it. Gotcha. It sounds like, obviously with his interactions that he had with the Dybbuk box, he felt that it was indeed a possessed item, or a haunted item.
Haunted item.
And I guess haunted item would be the best term. It sounds like he sold the rights to the whole Dybbuk box story in about 2004. So there was a couple years of time in between there, and they made a movie about it.
And is that one The Possession?
The Possession.
Yeah, that's the one that I said, ooh, we should watch that.
Came out in 2012. So
Oh, that's newer.
I don't
than
think I've
expected.
seen that one.
I haven't either. Have you seen that one, Jess? The Possession?
No, scary movies scare me, so I usually avoid them.
You know what? I usually don't watch the blood and guts ones like Saw and stuff like that. But if it's one based on a true haunting, like
The Conjuring.
The Conjuring and those. So when I found out that The Possession was based on this Dybbuk box story, I was like, ooh, we got to watch that. So I think one of these movie nights, we're going to watch that.
That should be an interesting one.
Been a while.
So we kind of have touched on what I would call, in parentheses, the Dybbuk box. Dybbuk box. Kind of the one when people talk about the Dybbuk box. I think that's the one they're referring to. But it's not the only Dybbuk box. There are other boxes out there that are purported to hold demons and have been made specially using witchcraft and other things to try to capture a demon in the box and hold it there. I watched a number of YouTubes with different people that had purchased Dybbuk boxes off of eBay or different places, and had Dybbuk box openings, and had some very interesting results in a number of them. Again, I don't know how much of that is entertainment only, how much of that is accurate. It's kind of hard to tell. We looked at a couple of them, and it seemed not too realistic, but then there were others. One was really quite interesting. The guy had the box and was doing a very, kind of professional paranormal investigation of the box, where he pulled out a spirit box with it and did it in a K2 and a whole bunch of different things, and he had a Ghost Meter Pro. And it was very interesting because he went all around it, and there was one spot on the Dybbuk box where he would put the Ghost Meter Pro and it would light up, and then he would pull it a little further away and it would go off, and then he would put it back to the same spot and it would light up, and he'd go all the way around it and do different things, and it kept lighting up. And it was, as I remember right, it was like an old candy box, probably 8 inches by 5 inches by 3 inches.
Not a very big box.
Not a very big box. And it was sealed with wax. It had the wax over it and everything else.
They had an SB7 spirit box there.
Mm-hmm.
And the spirit box, you heard a woman's voice, at least it sounded like a woman's voice to me, that said, "Let me out." It was like you've got your Ghost Meter Pro is lighting up every time you get it close to the box. He'd pick the box up and said, anytime he got the box close, it would light up. And then this woman's voice saying, "Let me out." And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to be burying that in the salt flats.
And this one seemed very credible, didn't it?
Yes. And it wasn't so much what he was doing at the time, because it's like, okay, yeah, you could fake that just to get responses. It's what happened afterwards, because he had 2 or 3 more episodes after it.
Mm-hmm.
So he opens it. And when he opened it, there was like a burnt... Am I getting something mixed up?
No, I think you're right. There were a few things
There's
inside.
a few things in there, and so he sprinkled some holy water in it.
Mm-hmm.
And when he sprinkled holy water in it, the first couple sprinkles, like it smoked. You could see smoke coming out, and you're like, what in the heck? And then it caught on fire.
And he said it stunk, too.
Yeah, he said it stunk. I think the one that caught on fire, I think that was a different one. This one, he just said it stunk. But he opened it up, and he's kind of looking around. Well, then he puts the K2 meter back up by it, and it's not lighting up anymore. And so again, you're thinking, oh, okay, yeah, just whatever bells and whistles he did to do this. But then behind him, he had his
YouTube plaque.
His YouTube plaque for 100,000 subscribers. It falls off the wall. And he was like, whoa.
Hey, yeah, guys, help us get our YouTube plaque.
Yeah, we're going for 100,000 as well.
So then he left.
He
got spooked and he left. And so, and again.
Went to a friend's home that night.
Yeah. And so then he went back the next day, and he's like, you can tell I just left because I left all my lights on. He's like, my electricity bill is going to be sky high, probably in California. And then he goes back and he's videoing, from the outside. And he's like, my lights are back on in that room. I did not leave those lights on. And then you could see a shadow walking back and forth. And he's like, there's nobody in there. What is that shadow?
I kind of wanted to ask your opinion on that, actually. From what I was reading with Dybbuks in general, I kind of associate them with demonic entities, but it sounds like in Jewish mythology, a lot of times they're viewed as dislocated souls of a dead person that are capable of possessing others and causing problems. Is it possible to actually trap a human soul in an object like that? Is it possible for a human soul to possess another body if it's not a demonic entity?
I don't know. I would think
human souls are attached to objects, so maybe could you make it happen?
You could probably make it happen. But, demonic entities, the way they talked about it on a couple of and I'm getting some of these videos mixed up, but the way they talk about it, it sounds like even with the Dybbuk box that we talked about earlier, and some of these, was that they just had this really nasty entity that they were somehow able to trap in these boxes.
I guess
I know, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but just along the same line really quick before I forget, I know that these demonic entities want to have a body so bad. That's why there's so many haunted dolls and haunted masks, because they will go into anything that replicate.
They kind of emulate a human.
It's
a
like,
little
oh,
bit.
look, it's a mask.
That
This
was
is as close as I can get.
That was kind of what I was trying to reconcile in my mind. Is would a human soul attempt to possess another human soul? Would a spirit try to do that, or are we just labeling these things, even though they're demonic entities, but we're saying, oh yeah, it's a bad spirit, right?
I think a human spirit who's had a body, I don't know that it would want to possess anything. I mean, I'm not saying that they couldn't. I just think the nature of them.
Well, and part of that is coming from our culture. Okay,
that's true.
And the Jewish culture may be a little bit different because there was also, I saw snippets of a movie that was done in the 1920s or 30s called The Dybbuk. And it was a Jewish, it's part of the Jewish heritage American film things, and they were showing some things, and it was a young bride that had, that she was pregnant, I believe, and her boyfriend or her husband had died, and she was actually going to the cemetery. She was at the cemetery in this scene, and there was another person there, and I don't know if it was a person or
like a spirit,
an entity. And they were talking about the possession of the body, and that, it was her intention, to have his soul come and be with her in her soul. And so kind of where you were asking, kind of,
a soul possessing another soul or something.
Yeah, and especially where there would be, in this case, that was her desire, was to be with her, to have her husband's soul with her.
Right.
And again, I'm not trying to say I know a lot about Jewish mythology or culture along this line, but that was the way it was represented in this part of the film.
It wasn't represented as like a demonic entity per se. It was like basically the displaced spirit of your husband, and you're kind of like, hey,
and she's thinking,
come on back,
we can be together, in my body. And
so my kind of thoughts on that, if I go into the doctrine of my religion, I don't know that. I mean, I do believe that if a human spirit chooses to stay here and not cross over, not move on, I think they can be coerced and threatened by those demonic entities, by those type 3s. But that comes down to their agency. Am I going to let this demonic entity push me around and intimidate me and tell me what to do and threaten me and scare me? I don't know that I don't know that a human could, but I guess if you're easily intimidated, a human could intimidate
or
you.
if you open yourself up to it.
Right.
It's that idea of opening an invitation for that other entity, whether it's passed on, to come into and when I say possess, you, I mean,
and maybe it's not possession in the way we think of demonic possession, but maybe just influence you in a way. I don't know. It was one of those things where I was trying to reconcile that in my mind. Is from the Jewish lore, it seems like it's almost a human that is malicious, a human spirit. But with this Dybbuk Box story that came out in 2001, definitely is just screaming demonic entity. Exactly.
Dybbuk means to cling. So, is it something it just clings onto? Can it be a spirit in general?
Could it
does
be
it
either?
have to be a demonic? Yeah. Can it be because you're saying would a human spirit do that? Well, what if some evil serial killer spirit person's I'm gonna do some evil demon looking stuff? I don't know if that's a thing.
I think that's possible.
At least negatively influence you in some way. Yeah.
But I think in general, and I'm not trying to play the devil's advocate here, I just think in general, most of these things, I would guess that 99% of these would be actual demonic entities.
They sound demonic.
And I'm not saying that it couldn't just be some jerk ass. I swore, sorry.
This is a family show.
You obviously didn't listen to it in the old days, did you?
We have
much
cleaned up our
cleaner.
act, yes.
We have always been clean. I do not disagree with the fact that sometimes it could just be a really nasty human spirit, but my guess is the majority of it, the high majority,
would be demon.
Is going to be demonic.
Mm-hmm.
It would be an interesting episode to see difference between a real evil human spirit compared to demon. What are some correlations, or what could the evil human spirit do comparatively? I don't know.
Yeah, kind of what their capabilities or what you would maybe what the telltale signs would be if you're dealing with one versus the other. Well, I thought it was interesting how much we talked about how much I don't want to say publicity, but how well known the story of the Dybbuk Box is, right? I mean, just because of all the documentation, because of all the stories, because of
has it been like on Ghost
internet,
Adventures?
It's been on Ghost Adventures. There's a movie about it,
it's
right?
in the Zach Baggins
and then
Museum in Las Vegas,
right?
In the YouTube little kids who are like, I'm gonna buy one on eBay and open it up at 3 a.m.
Exactly. It's kind of taken on a life of its own. But I was reading through that, Kevin Mannis, the guy who originally said he found the Dybbuk Box in 2021, said, "Oh, I just made up that story." And you go, wow, if you did, it is taken on a life of its own for sure. And there's a lot of people who have felt impacted by this, right? And I don't know if that comes down to
power of suggestion, psychosomatic.
Right. Is it truly haunted, or is it now haunted because we perceive it as haunted?
And people put their own intent into it.
Right. Do people, you notice bad things happen, and you go, oh, it's got to be from that darn Dybbuk box because I know it's haunted, right? I don't know. It's I thought it was interesting just to see how big this story has been. And this is like 20 years later where reportedly he comes out and he was like, it was a funny joke, right? I don't know.
Or is it?
Right, or is it? But, then you talk about all these other examples. I mean, that's one example of a Dybbuk box. But even if that story is fictional, does it make every other Dybbuk box
not true?
Not true. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, so just if you run across a Dybbuk box for sale, don't buy it.
Yeah.
And then don't open it.
And don't go out looking for them.
Even
The
if the
scariest
story
part
might
about
be made up.
The scariest part about it, you said 2001 was 20 years ago.
I
Yeah.
know, right?
Concerned.
That's pretty frightening.
Like, wait a minute.
That being said, I wouldn't mind just making a Dybbuk-looking box for my Halloween decorations.
Okay, but there's not going to be any incantations.
No, just get a box.
I mean,
and
I don't
wax
care if you
on
get a
it.
box and put some wax
I'll
on
throw a
it.
couple wheat pennies and some hair in there, and we'll seal it up with some wax. It'll be great fun.
Because if you've seen my house, I don't do cutesy Halloween. Although I did buy some kind of cutesy Halloween gnomes at Marshall's the other day.
There is the Dybbuk box. There are other Dybbuk boxes. You can go out if you would like, and we don't suggest this. Go out to eBay and find them and
look at them. Do not buy them. Do not open them.
Just
Don't
type
say.
Dybbuk box in the search engine.
and if you
Do not
want to
say we told you to.
if you want to see how something like that works, go out and hit YouTube and hit Dybbuk Box. There's some very interesting box openings there, but we would recommend not doing that.
Yes, very very. Do not buy the Dybbuk boxes on eBay. Do not open them. Look at them on eBay and go, oh, ooh, ah, and then turn your computer off.
You're like taking a risk just buying anything at a yard sale, let
Right?
alone going to eBay and knowing you're getting into trouble, right?
Let's be done with the Dybbuk boxes.
Don't look up Dybbuk boxes on Etsy either.
A DIY kit.
Wow,
Yeah.
that might be a nice seller. We could try it.
Yeah, and a lot of the ones, a lot of the videos out on eBay that I saw, they didn't tell you how to make a Dybbuk box, which I think is good. I don't think we need to do that. And our show doesn't really promote the idea of summoning and bringing entities in, and the same thing with our investigations. We're looking for things that are there and trying to understand what's there, not conjuring or bringing new entities in.
We know we could bring stuff in if we chose to do so. But the problem with that is you have no control over what you're bringing in.
Right. You open the door and
things
who
come.
knows? Who knows what walks through, right?
Exactly.
And that comes with Ouija boards or seances. Thank you, Radio Ronin.
Hey, stay spooky, my haunty friends.
Have a good one.
Hey, good night.
Bye.
You've been listening to the Supernatural Hour at AdvancedParanormal.com. The Supernatural Hour is part of the Radio Ronin network found at RadioRonin.com. Copyright by Advanced Paranormal Services.